I'm so glad that I met you,
Yeah.
because, as so often is the case, we didn't appreciate what we were doing.
Right.
And I was able to take our own library, and the fact that we have archives in our basement there, and then the ELCA offices in Chicago.
Right.
And so I called them and I told our own library, and they said, "Oh, University of Iowa, Iowa Women's, oh, well, we should have that too." I bet you found that true. Have you?
Yes.
What happens? People don't know what they have?
They don't know what's important or what they have, and then they hear someone else's interest, and they think, "Oh, yeah, that's a good idea."
This is important.
Yeah.
And the very fact that and even in telling you that day, and the fact that that is continuous. I mean, this is the 40th anniversary of women being ordained in the ELCA, and that we have it from telling the story of first when they came, and then they came, and then the persistent voice, and then the book, and then the DVD, brings us really right up to the present.
Right. So the ELCA archives do they have any of your newsletters or anything like that?
They do now.
Good, good.
I sent them. Well, and we have a woman in Chicago that works with women's issues and helps us work on equity issues for women and men. And so she said, send it to me, and then I'll also get it into the archives.
Excellent.
So, and we in the ELCA have continued, when we formed ourselves as a church in 1988, many church bodies that had strong women's groups and went through mergers, let the women's groups go.
Right. And that has negative consequences.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, we're all done with that. We have
Yes.
nothing left to do. We're finished with that. But that's a long story in women's activism.
And we kept both the women of the ELCA and then had what you call women's desk in a way, and saying that both are important at this juncture in history. I think it is true, both that women's sphere, that women would continue, and it's continued to be very strong, and in putting forth representational principles that overnight then women and men should be equal on all boards and committees and whatever, and that at seminary, for example, we have equal numbers of women and men, and to work for that balance. There are many divinity schools and seminaries where we have now more women than men, or some graduate schools now,
Right.
some programs have more women than men, and that's not my goal.
Right.
I mean, I would like there to
Right.
be more equal numbers. Yeah. So you showed
Yes.
it.
Well, and women's history has had that. You know, people think, well, early on people thought, well, women's history is something we need to do now because women were left out of history, but someday we won't need to do it. But I think it's as vital as ever and as necessary as ever.
Yeah.
There are just important issues that have to do with gender and sexuality and women and men that are not going to be studied if we don't have women's history, I believe.
I fully believe. And then even with this newsletter, Persistent Voice, each year, as I say in here, we met 1990s when we began, because women were waiting for calls. And this year, again, people are waiting for calls. But each year we would meet. So this year, just a couple weeks ago, we met again and said, do we still need to have the persistent voice? And we had, just last week, when we had one man came and said, yes, we do. But the fact that we've changed now our mission statement to addressing issues of gender injustice across the globe, and working towards the full partnership of women and men in ministry. And we just filled the board with issues. One for men, that they still are considered babysitting when they take care of their own children.
Yes, that's right.
And then one of our women, her mother, and her father's a pastor, her mother was a pastor's wife, and she said, what her mother, the role expectation, she said, how has that changed, the role of pastor's wife? And yet women in seminary today are saying now, can I get pregnant and get a first call? And so some of the issues are the same, and yet some of the issues are different, but the issues continue to be issues of gender injustice.
Right, that's right.
And I mean, I'm guessing that's true in other professions too.
Absolutely.
So.
And I love the name, the person.